The Chant is the first game developed by Brass Token. It was published by Prime Matter and was released in November of 2022. You play as Jess, a completely average 20-somethinger who enjoys long jogs through the park and post-traumatic hallucinations, such as the time her sister tried out for the National Floating Championships. Unfortunately, she was also an overachiever. Jess immediately decides her best chance for recovery is to join her childhood friend Kim on a remote island inhabited exclusively by a New Age spiritualist movement called Charismatic Science, who are definitely not a reborn cult from the 70s that tried to unalive a pregnant woman. Upon arriving at the island, Jess is met by Kim, who explains that the Charismatic Science Spiritual Retreat is totally cool, and certainly not an isolated cultist compound. You could tell it's spiritual from all the pine trees, the cheap tents, and the decaying remnants of the previous compound. After watching an 8mm indoctrination, Jess is all but ready to give up her skeptical nature and accept the vibrations of Crystal Jesus into her heart.
How do I look? Like one of us. Kim, doesn't this all feel a little bit culty? This is good for us.
Okay.
Unfortunately, the totally innocent drug-induced meditation party goes wrong, and Jess finds herself in a chaotic parallel dimension filled with Japanese hentai horrors. This strange realm is known as the Gloom. It exists constantly beside our dimension, but is usually unseeable and inaccessible without first properly attuning to its vibrations through the use of a ritual. A ritual that requires 7 participants, each in possession of a different colored crystal. Jess's only chance of escape lies in harnessing the power of these crystals and pushing back the ever-growing gloom. The Chant is a linear, narrative-driven affair played from a third-person perspective with a heavy focus on melee combat. Now, what does that remind you of? Many of the expected survival horror tropes are here, including limited supplies, light crafting elements, and some puzzle solving. There's also a skill tree, but it's nothing game-changing, and honestly I preferred that here. You can increase your stats and buff certain magics, but you won't feel underpowered if you don't go hunting down enough bath salts to max out your stats. Of which there are 3, mind, body, and spirit. Mind reflects the player's mental willpower to withstand psychological damage, body is pretty obvious, don't get hit, and spirit is used to channel your magical crystal powers. A variety of magic abilities are unlocked as new crystals are collected, along with magical weapons that can be crafted from the natural surroundings, such as sage sticks, essential oils, and, salt. There is something fantastically hilarious about throwing about flammable oils and slapping cultists with smudge sticks while clutching a handful of colored crystals. It's like a new age pagan power fantasy. And yet as unconventional as this arsenal may appear, combat flows well. Controls are responsive, and the option to choose between a quick sidestep or a full dive to the floor offers a risk to reward in combat that I was not expecting. Enemies usually have a weakness to a particular flavoured stick, so resource management is important, otherwise drawn out fights can begin to whittle down your reserves. And enemies can be challenging, often attacking in groups or unleashing punishing combos and special abilities. There are also quite a few boss encounters for Jess to overcome, and while I threw quite a few corpses at some of them before getting the upper hand, none were obnoxious, drawn out, or overtuned. On top of all of this, there's the noxious nature of the gloom itself. Just being in an area under the gloom's influence will drain your willpower, which when emptied will send you spiraling into a panic attack, forcing you to flee to safety. But for all these challenges, the game is fairly forgiving, even on the highest difficulty. Checkpoints are well spaced, health and crafting materials are never too scarce, and enemies aren't overtuned, though being unprepared will make some encounters more skill-based. The Chant looks great, and I'm especially impressed with the variety of environments they've been able to squeeze onto the island. There's the stark blackness of the burnt forests. the abandoned crystal mines where so much of the resulting misfortune began, and the old colony village where the miners initially lived and soon died, as well as the foreboding remains of the Prismic Science original compound, complete with gaudy 70s paraphernalia and malign occult remains. Each chapter has a unique setting that keeps the world interesting without feeling out of place. Ironically, this makes the otherworldly gloom slowly grow duller in comparison as the game continues. It never evolves beyond changing color tones and eyeball coral, becoming mundane in its repetition. Instead of being a foreboding and intrusive alien landscape, it instead feels more like the Dark Aether from Metroid Prime 2. Luckily, this isn't the case with the creature designs. Mutant bullfrogs controlled by parasitic worms and chitinous insects that exude acid are not a bad start, but the most common and intriguing enemies are the mandalas, a plant-like species that grows, mutates, and proliferates throughout the gloom. The design might be familiar to anyone who's walked down a health food aisle or seen a masseuse before, and takes its name from the floral mandala commonly used in Buddhist and Hindu meditation as a way to focus the mind. It can be seen scattered throughout the cult's compound, which made me wonder, and this is pure conjecture, could it be that the Prismic Science, and maybe even spiritualists at large, have been unknowingly tapping into the gloom for centuries, subliminally receiving mandala designs as they unwittingly stare into the faces of interdimensional horrors? And just look at these beasties. The mimic crawler looks like some kind of lotus-faced demogorgon. This thing moves like a leopard, pouncing and corkscrewing through the air, making it hard to hit and even harder to dodge. Then there's its subspecies variants, the Toxitile with its ability to seemingly slip between dimensional layers, beyond that of even the Gloom, and the Gargantuan Trudger, all but invincible due to its immense prismatic power. And then there's the cast. I will say, motion capture and voice acting ranges from good to very good, but unfortunately it's all in service to some fairly dull characters. Each has their own reason for attending the Prismatic Science slumber party, but before there's much of a chance to explore this, the gloom is unleashed, and they devolve into 2D characters, often to hilarious results. Take, for example, Sunny, who is friendly and outgoing one minute, then deigning to rule the world with magic crystals the next. Or Hannah, who was asking for relationship advice not 10 minutes ago.
Jess, I feel so stuck with Tyler. What should I do?
But has now instead decided that she'd prefer to be the all-seeing, all-knowing Godhead. Unfortunately, most character interactions throughout are like this, and do nothing to build a sense of rapport, and instead just gave me whiplash.
Look, I'm gonna chill here for a bit. Maybe smoke something.
The underlying narrative, however, is quite good. It's an interesting cosmic horror tale, inspired, I assume, by Lovecraft's From Beyond, in which an electronic resonator is used to harmonize wavelengths with another dimension, allowing both sides to interact with one another to terrifying results. In the same way, our 7 would-be Kool-Aid drinkers harmonize with their crystals through meditation and chant. However, as the gloom's influence grows, the campers begin falling to madness, fleeing from the campsite to remote areas of the island. But this happens 4 times, conveniently one after the other, and always while Jess is around. I get this has to happen for the game to progress, but you very quickly realize everyone on the island will eventually turn evil, so you can bully them and steal their rocks. However, it is hilarious seeing Jess show up at the campsite positively caked in blood after chasing down her fellow campers, trying to explain that she had no other option but to beat them to death with sticks and steal their magic crystals.
You smashed her face into a mirror. She wasn't possessed. You're psychotic.
Because the story is so predictable, there isn't a lot of replay value, and apart from a few hate newspaper-tiered dialogue options, everything is very linear, so I sure as hell wasn't expecting it to end on a cliffhanger. This leads straight into the free DLC, The Gloom Below. Strangely, it's a randomized roguelite where you're tasked with collecting different MacGuffins to free Jess and Kim from the Gloom Vortex.
Right. Of course we do. This shit never ends, does it?
And after playing about 20 minutes of it, the goodwill that had been cultivated over the past 7-hour campaign was all but dead. Low resources, wildly varied difficulty spikes, and vague direction helped me to very quickly realize I was more than happy to leave Jess and Kim stranded at the bottom of that hole if it meant that I could escape playing any more of, well, that.
I really hate this place.
The Chant has some fun ideas that work well. Despite the dull cast, I really enjoyed the story and was pleasantly surprised by the variety of interesting and diverse environments on display, especially the crumbling ruins of the original Prismic science compound. Combat is intuitive while incorporating interesting twists on survival horror tropes. Bosses offer a solid challenge, and enemy variety ensures you won't get bored throwing candles at things. And I really liked the use of traditional magic components as literal weapons. It's a unique interpretation of ritualistic componentry that's never been explored in this way before, and I think it was well incorporated. And without spoiling too much, the final boss is really spectacular, a terrific reward for reaching the finale. Just don't bother with the DLC. Sure, it's free, but choose life. Read a book. Mow the lawn, or just stare at a wall, and keep staring, and staring, until maybe you feel something staring back.